And we're about to start. I'm about to let them in. Beau, you still there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Okay, good. Yes, I can hear you. I had to mute some of the people coming in. I don't, sometimes it cuts everybody off.
I just had to unmute Renee.
Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, we're going to get started. Good morning and welcome to our 4th day of training. Today, I want to introduce to you Beau Hill, who is the Executive Director of Harbor Lights at the Salvation Army Harbor Light Complex. Welcome, Beau.
Good morning, Renee. Good morning, everyone.
So you can start, Beau.
I'm good. All right. I just didn't want to start talking and then interrupt you. So
No, you're good.
good morning, everyone. What Renee asked me to discuss is talk about in total some of our programming, residential programming that we have, and then break it down to our homeless services, and then also our shelter for survivors and how we've interacted with those survivors over the last 20-ish or so years. So I'm Beau and I'm very informal. So if you need to interrupt me, raise a hand, do whatever, I'm happy to take any questions at any time for any reason. So here at the Salvation Army Harbor Light, we end up providing a whole host of services. We provide services to those involved in the criminal justice system. So those in lieu of going to jail, in lieu of going to prison, returning from jail, returning from prison, we do a lot of services for those with substance abuse disorder. So our substance use disorder, there's a high prevalence of people with alcohol and opioid challenges. We also provide services to homeless men. And then we have a large family shelter as well. And then under that umbrella, we have various kind of sub-programs. In 2005, we started working in the human trafficking space because there was really no options for people to be served when someone was recovered, that basically there was not a direct link for those with substance use disorder that needed detoxification or for those that just needed a space. The only space that they were going was into basically a jail setting or to a very, very large overcrowded shelter designated for women. So sometime around 2005, 20-ish years ago, we as the Salvation Army stepped in and we said, listen, we got to find another solution. So we ended up starting to place survivors into our family shelter program. And where it was good is that it was a good, safe space for those individuals, but it was also a challenge because when we did that, we actually had to displace a family that otherwise would be utilizing that room. And it worked well. It was good. The staff responded to it well. And then we had one designated social worker, and her specialty was working with this population. Also, at that point in time, opioid use was skyrocketing in our community and all across America. So what we ended up starting to see was a lot of younger people with that were addicted to opioids. And so part of our substance abuse program is detoxification. And so we provide detox for those that are on opiates. And it was nice because if they recovered the I think you guys already spoke with John Morgan. If the task force recovered someone and they needed either a place to stay or they had a significant addiction issue, they had one call that they needed to make, and we could assist that person no matter what. And then if the individual said, hey, I'm not addicted to opioids, I'm fine, and they're in a shelter space, essentially, and we found out that they were addicted because many times, especially at that outset, finding the real challenges of that individual, the real immediate challenges is difficult. If they were in a shelter space and were going through withdrawal, we could actually transfer them very easily into our detox program. So we were doing that for providing those services from somewhere around 2005 to somewhere around 2014, call it 10 years. And then we embarked on a capital campaign to build a new family shelter. And in the picture, you can see behind me is one of the rooms in that space. And basically, it was a family shelter. We housed 35 families a night, but there was a specifically designated apartment unit in that shelter that was for survivors. And what was nice about that is that we were able to create the apartment unit, but not increase our operating funds, because we all know to get staff and things like that, it's very, very costly. And if you are having a residential program, to have that residential program be fully managed by volunteers is logistically difficult. So you have to have paid staff to do that. And so we were not able, we didn't have to increase our staffing and our expenses once we opened that up. And essentially, all of the survivors that come in have access badges where they're in the family shelter space, but they also have their own apartment unit that they can access. And so it's basically a 3-bedroom apartment unit, and then there's a set of bunk beds in each unit. And so they have a shared bathroom and a shared living room area. And that was the best thing that we could do. It was an unbelievable response in our community. But what I've learned from that is that it's much better to have individual spaces for survivors, but it is very hard logistically to do that and staff it and keep things going, because when a survivor immediately comes to us, they have a whole host of needs, and their perception of what they need oftentimes is different than the reality. And so we're trying to respond in such a way that I like to say that we are an immediate respite. All right. And it's not a long-term, it's not intended to be a long-term shelter. It's not intended to be a long-term program. It's not intended to that. What it's intended for is to be an immediate response for a safe space for that individual, so that we as a community can come around that person, surround them, and then as expediently as possible move them onto a better long-term solution, whatever that solution may be. There's some people that have come to us that their best long-term solution is to move back to California, to whatever that solution is, we want to provide that. Where our partnership has been amazing with Renee, and I'll go on record with this if this is being recorded. I absolutely love her. She's an angel in our community and just is unbelievable. Is that with the people that we serve, there's grace that goes along, grace and understanding that goes along with that. And it's hard when it comes to services, especially in a residential setting, because when you are approaching that person with grace and understanding, you are working in a gray area as far as the rules are concerned. And that makes it hard because then what is right for one client may be wrong for the other client, but it may be the same thing that you're doing. And so really working with that. And then the other challenge, and the best way that I can articulate it, is that when we have children of our own, our children live with us. And our children sometimes can absolutely drive us nuts. All right, because we see all the idiosyncrasies, we love on them the best way we can, we do all that. And when some of the ladies that we serve are in the community and they're engaged with a community provider for a half an hour or an hour or for a counseling session or something like that, there are many times where that individual can come across in such a way that would make it seem like everything is great, grand, wonderful. But then when they're with us and living with us 24/7, dealing with some of that trauma and some of those challenges are very, very difficult. And so when it comes to historically how we've managed things within our community and our services, I would say that issue is the most challenging, because if a community provider sends us Susie is presenting to that community provider as if they're an angel and they're absolutely acting perfectly and everything is fine. And then sometimes when they're with us, that is very, very far from the case. And if it's very far from the case, we have to manage that. And then there's a difference of opinion in the community regarding that client. And then navigating that is very, very difficult. So I've talked for 15 minutes and I can keep talking for 2 hours, but if there's any questions, I'd like to pause and answer any questions that you may have. And I think Renee said there were 3 or 4 questions from some of the sessions prior that she wanted to address.
So I want to tell the audience, if you have a question for Beau, put it in the chat so that we can bring it up and ask him. These were some questions from yesterday about the shelter that we weren't able to answer. We saved these for you. And the first one was, how long do you keep people affected by human trafficking in a shelter or domestic violence? And does this in any way make them over-dependent and unwilling to leave the shelter, even if they are ready?
First of all, that is an excellent question. And the general guidelines are, if the individual is continuing to move towards their goals, then we don't want to have them take a step back. So we want to do everything possible not to have them make a step back. But also at the same time, there are people that have such trauma and other things like that, that we have become their family, so to speak. And they become comfortable. And then they get scared to have to worry about, hey, how am I going to feed myself? How am I going to pay rent? How am I going to get food? You know, all of those logistical daily things, they get scared. And so it becomes, you kind of switch from a case management perspective to addressing those issues so that you can move them on. And you never want to push them out before they're ready, but at the same time, you don't want to, we are not a permanent residence where someone can stay for 5 or 10 years. Did that answer your question, Renee?
Yes, that's perfect. And we have a.
Yeah, we have
another
one
question,
from Clayford. How is the government involved in the running of the shelter or help?
Clayford, that is a really, really good question, because in 2005, we started doing these services. We did not get government funding to start and help that. All of the money all of the expenses for this operation is funded by the Salvation Army. Since 2005, we've received 0 government dollars to provide services. And in 2018, we made a big push to expand these services and hopefully get some government dollars to do so, but we're unsuccessful getting government support. And that is a challenging thing for me personally, because there's many times people in the government don't have another answer, and then they will call us for assistance, but they've never provided funding for us in 20 years.
Okay, another question we had from yesterday was, how do you deal with abusive clients that are found in the shelter? And in case you find one, and in case a client is willing to come to the shelter, how do you handle this situation?
When you say abusive, is abusive for what occurred to the individual, or are they being abusive to other people within the shelter?
Being abusive to other people within the shelter.
So if they are being abusive to other people in the shelter, the safety and security of the residential program is paramount. And we've, an example that is probably the most profound example that I can think of off the top of my head is we were serving a trans individual. And this trans woman was very tall, and still anatomically male. And she was sharing a space with another woman who is younger, whose perpetrators were large African-American men. And the trans woman was constantly walking around their room without any clothes on. And we had conversations with her to say, listen, go to the shower, do those things, but do not just constantly be naked, because it's causing issues for the person that's sharing the space with you. And it was something where we had to ask her to leave, because she was not doing anything to show that grace and, I would say, love and understanding to the other person in the space. And then we, as the Salvation Army, there was other challenges with that trans woman, where she was aggressive to staff and other clients as well. But we had to ask her to leave. And then when we asked her to leave, there was a very negative response from the community. And it was a difficult situation. So did that answer that question, Renee?
Yes, that was good. Because we do have times when we have to deal with those kind of situations, and they wanted to know how you dealt with it. Another question we had yesterday was, how do you prepare survivors for their transition out of the shelter into independent living?
So that's where we need to come together as a community to try to find the resources to do that. And so we obviously work with Renee Jones, we work with Rape Crisis Center, we work with any provider in the community that can assist the individuals that we serve. And the one person that I am thinking of that was here for a longer period of time, she was here 18 months to 2 years or so. There were lots of challenges with her, And we needed to get housing solutions in the community that provide housing options for homeless individuals, and then as well as all of the other case management social supports to address some of the trauma in her background so that she could successfully move on. And she was an extended case because of the grace that was required to have her be successful. And that was a challenge.
I have one.
Okay, we have another question.
Beau, you mentioned you have paid staff and volunteers. Do you ever have interns at your shelter, or would you recommend it? Why or why not?
Can you answer that question, or can you ask that question one more time? Because I didn't quite hear the last part.
Do you ever have interns at your shelter, or would you recommend it? Why or why not?
So what I would recommend is stability when operating a residential program is absolutely critical. When you have staff, volunteers, or interns that are constantly coming and going that do not understand or buy into the culture and philosophy that you are trying to create, it creates that disruption and lack of continuity creates challenges for you.
Okay, we have another one. Obviously, victims come from different religious backgrounds, and Salvation Army has some Christian perspective. Do you have multiple avenues of faith that would support the victims without making them feel sidelined on the religious front?
So as the Salvation Army, we are a Christian organization. We're in 140 some countries worldwide, and our mission is to preach the gospel of Jesus Christ and meet human need in his name without discrimination. We have lots of people with different faiths, different gender identities that work with us. And so the provision of our services is not contingent on a specific religious affiliation. So do we have lots of different churches that come in and provide services? I would say we have some different churches that come in and provide assistance. They'll serve meals at the shelter, they'll do other things. And I'm a strong believer that whatever your faith is, if there is a spiritual transformation in your life, there will be a social transformation in your life. So if someone that comes to us is Muslim, or someone that comes to us is Jewish, or wherever their faith is, linking them to those services in that faith-based community is absolutely critical.
That's it.
And I have another question. Remember, if you have questions for Beau while he's on, this is your chance to ask the question. Go to the chat line and put your question in. The next question, Beau, is what kind of aftercare or follow-up support is provided to survivors once they leave the shelter?
We do not have the resources to provide the aftercare or our focus is really on the individuals in the program and trying to successfully transition them into the community so that they have the supports in the community and the engagement. So for instance, the Renee Jones Center is just over the years, the number of people that they've impacted is countless. And when someone's in the community, we can't continue to provide that support to them. All right, our shelter staff. If someone is engaged in another core community center with the Salvation Army, they can maybe get support there, but our shelter staff don't have that capacity to do that. And so we hope that someone like Renee Jones or someone else in the community can provide those ongoing services and care that they need.
Okay, that's great. Another question is, do you allow relatives and friends to the victims to visit them while they're in the shelters?
So for the survivors area, if someone wants to leave and meet up with family or friends, we obviously can't change that especially at first, we've found that doing that is not conducive to their overall support, because what ends up happening is that that individual gets very quickly caught back up into the network that got them there prior to coming to us.
That question.
Okay, we have another question.
Where are you getting support to assist the survivors? Have you ever recorded any case where survivors have run away from the center?
So I'm not sure what you mean by recorded, but I can tell you that there's a lot of reasons why they come. And if you look at our length of stay is all over the map. There are times when we've had people stay with us for 18 months or 2 years, such as the case that I alluded to earlier. And then there's people that stay with us for 2 hours or 20 minutes. And they're all over the map because of the fact that many of the survivors have an immediate gratification and other mindset things that is going on. So if someone says, hey, listen, here's a safe, secure place for you to be, some of them feel like it's a jail or something like that, when that's not the intent, but that's what they feel like it is. And if they feel like their options are limited, then their first response is to run.
I have 2 more.
Okay, go ahead.
What types of activities are available for survivors and victims while staying at the shelter?
So there's so the most important thing is to provide the safe, secure environment. Secondly, we have people that come in that will do healthcare services. We want to try to do engagement with those individuals, and because such as arts, crafts, yoga. At one point in time, we had music therapy. And because the survivors area is actually in the same physical space of the larger family shelter, one of the things that's interesting is that when our activities person in the family shelter is providing services to people, the survivors can come and access that. So it's interesting to see 12-year-old kids or 8-year-old kids that are doing these games and activities, and it provides some normalcy for the ladies who are in the survivors area, provide some normalcy because they're interacting and in the same space as some of the other families, so to speak.
Thanks, Beau. Do officers have access to the shelter to protect survivors?
So you met with John Morgan. John Morgan has a badge that will allow him to come in at any given time to.
Mute yourself if you don't want to. You can be on there unmuted. Sorry, Beau, might join it. It's unmuted.
Biko tu bien, tutaviongea kesho. Makuta yao katika.
You want me to try to keep talking, Renee?
No, but I want to find out who that is.
Wao watumike, mimi napenda wafunga, kama nafunga ile bulongo, unaona ile fasi ya maibu, unaweza kutosha ile maibu, tunabeba ile bulongo ya muku tunaweka.
Okay, sorry about that.
Can you repeat the question one more time? I think that it was something like, what access does law enforcement have to the shelter? Is that correct?
Right, if there's somebody that, I guess the thing is there protection provided if somebody has been abused or is a victim, that they won't be able to have access to its abuser?
So because of the physical space, if their abuser is trying to access this person, it's they would have to actually gain access to the main building, which is an entrance below that red awning that you see there. Then once they get in the main building, which is through 2 secure doors, staff are at a front desk that's manned 24/7. And then, so not only would that individual have to get through that, but then they'd have to know exactly where the survivor is, which would be upstairs. All right, through a living room type area, and then through two other secured doors. And that's actually where the survivor stays. So there's actually 5 points of security, for lack of a better way of saying it, between someone on the street and that individual if they're staying in that space.
I have 3 more. Do you follow up on the survivors to see how their lives are after they leave the shelter? Do you conduct assessments to make sure their lives are improving?
We do not do that on a global scale with all of the people because we don't have that capacity, but there is some informal follow-up that occurs because there are some ladies that leave that have really made a connection with their social worker, and so they will follow up and come back. But as far as a formal thing, it is very, very difficult to contact people once they leave us, especially if they leave us and just walk away, because we don't know where they're at. Oftentimes we don't have cell phone numbers, we don't have any of that. And it would take a lot of staff time and management to be able to do that. And since we don't get any government money, it's our focus is just keep it open.
But how do you handle minors that come in that are young without any parents?
So we do not, the only survivors that we would work with are single adults 18 and over. If it was a minor, they would have to go to another placement. I think in our community right now, that is Beach Belfair, I think.
Okay. Have you ever had a survivor attempt to commit suicide? And if so, how did you handle it?
We have had a number of individuals that have tried to commit suicide and tried to overdose and things of that nature. And essentially the staff would go into crisis mode and either respond with naloxone or try to get crisis intervention services from the community to come as quickly as possible. And then
Okay, Beau, I want to ask you, Beau, can you clarify what's used so that they understand what it is when someone overdoses, what you're using and what it does?
So predominantly people, when they're using drugs right now, they're using opioids, heroin, fentanyl, carfentanil, things like that. Essentially what that does is that shuts your body down and makes you overdose. There is a drug that is a reversal drug that you can use that would essentially remove the opioids from the receptors of your brain, and it reduces the overdose or it reverses the effect of the overdose and will save that person's life.
Any more questions? All right, Beau, okay, we don't have any more questions, but I'm just gonna ask you a few questions about the services, because we have people on here that were interested in learning about what the shelter, your short-term housing, your long-term housing, and if you have any transitional housing options.
Are you specifically talking about survivors, or are you talking about homeless people in our system in general?
Yes, homeless and human trafficking survivors.
So in our community, homeless individuals come in through a centralized system, and they are assessed with the intention that if there's an intervention that can be done so that they don't enter the shelter system, we as a community would like to do that. And then if that intervention can't be done and there's literally no other place for them to stay, then you would essentially get in line to get a shelter space. In our community today, there are 27 families which are not able to be housed in a shelter space. And so once a family would come into that shelter space, our staff would try to work with them to address some of their social services needs, case management needs, with the focus on getting them into a permanent housing placement as quickly as possible. And there is another provider in our system that receives all of the residential and rapid rehousing funds, or funds to pay for rent and housing. That agency manages all of those resources. And so what we would do is we would work with that person or that family that's homeless, and then we would once they do an assessment to see which pot of money is best for permanent housing option, we would work with Eden to link that family or individual up to that housing support, whether it be a permanent HUD building, whether it be a CMHA building, whether it be voucher services, whether it be rapid rehousing services. And rapid rehousing has been the main focus in our community and nationwide since roughly 2008. And the rapid rehousing, the intent behind that is to provide 12 months or so of rental assistance so that that person or family can get into an apartment unit or a house, and then they can continue to work on improving their situation so that at the end of that 12 months, they would be able to take over the rent for that space that they are currently in. So did that answer it, Renee?
Yes, that's perfect. You have any more questions? Okay, so we don't have any more questions, but I'm just wanted to ask you to share one additional thing about how you work with the center, your canteen that goes out with our outreach efforts, because I'm going to be talking about that next, our outreach efforts. So I want you to share how you partner with us to go out on a street outreach.
So we are in Cleveland proper. There's a city just east of us called East Cleveland, which is ranked one of the poorest cities in America for as long as I can remember. And sometime around the early 2000s, there were no evening food services for people in East Cleveland. So what we started doing is we started taking our van or ambulance type unit, and we started putting food in that unit and going to a vacant parking lot in East Cleveland to serve the people in that community every evening for food. And then in 2017, the Salvation Army built what we call a core community center, which is a church that has social services in it. We built one very close to that location where we serve meals. And so now we serve meals in the parking lot at the Salvation Army every evening, so that kids in the community and people from the community can come and get a hot meal. And we'll serve 50 to 75 people a day roughly. And then with Renee Jones and her outreach, I'm going to say it's an outreach ministry, Renee, so apologize for that, but
That's
it
okay.
is. And with her outreach ministries, what we've done is we've said that we want to do that in support of some of the outreach services that she does. And so we'll on the evenings, which we partner with her, we'll just double up the number of meals. And then Nelson, one of our staff people, will take the meals that are done from our kitchen, and we'll put them in the van and then go to wherever the activity is and provide meals to those people attending.
Okay,
I have two more.
we have two more last questions, Beau, and then we'll, to go with the one.
Okay, Beau, the question is, how do you handle protection issues in the shelters? And how survivor access other social services while they're in these shelters?
Can you say that again? Because I could talk for 2 hours on that, and I want to make sure that I answer the question.
Big
succinctly.
one first.
How do you handle protection? He already answered that one. Sheltered, how survivor access other social services while they're in these shelters? Can they access other help and social services?
Yes, they can access other help. In all of our programs, they're not lockdown units. So if someone doesn't like to be there, our staff will encourage them to stay and want to continue services, but they cannot make an individual stay. And so if someone chooses to leave because they have free access to come and go, we try to get them to the services that they need, that they would need in the community. And we are located in downtown Cleveland. And so there's a plethora of services very close to our facility.
Okay, here's the last question. What are the mechanisms and policies in place for reporting cases of abuse by staff, sexually or physically or emotionally?
So we have a grievance procedure that we use in all of our programs. And that grievance procedure basically says that two individuals that have a disagreement should try to work it out. If that doesn't work, then it escalates to the social worker, then escalates to the program manager, and then there's an independent person that is on our staff that's not directly involved in any program that would get that report and then investigate it. And then ultimately it would come to me. We also have a reporting mechanism. The Salvation Army has a reporting mechanism online that if someone feels that they are abused or anything of that nature, they can report that. And then if it's one of the programs that I'm responsible for, then it would come down from the Salvation Army, and then we would investigate that and respond accordingly.
Okay, perfect. Well, Beau, we want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to be part of this global workshop and share this information about what you're doing, the great work that's being done at the Salvation Army. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Renee. God bless you all.
God bless you too.
Can I log off, Renee? Am I good?
Absolutely, you're
All right,
good.
see you.
Bye-bye. All right, let's see. Okay, so that's great. I'm glad that we were able to include some of the questions from yesterday in the chat box. So remember, if you have questions, this is your opportunity to ask. Put it in the chat box. And our next topic, we're going to be sharing with you about Project Red Cord Street Outreach and what we do with outreach to reach victims that may be on the street that don't know that there are services available. They don't know that they can get help. So street outreach is an important way that we spread human trafficking awareness, information, but also provide very basic needs to the people who are in these communities. Each community that I'm going to share with you, this being the first one, is an area in the city that has a high level of prostitution. It has the highest level of prostitution in the entire city. It has been like that for many years. Most of the years that our center has been open, it's been that issue, and way before we were open, and we were open going into our 21st year. So it's something about this particular neighborhood that attracts a lot of people who are looking to purchase people for sex trafficking. And it's an opportunity for us That is why this particular location was selected as our first location many years ago when we started to do street outreach, because we knew that some of the people that were being prostituted in this particular neighborhood were victims of human trafficking. But again, as we discussed earlier, at first, the law enforcement and the people that we were working with in the early years, they really did not believe that human trafficking happened here in the United States. But the outreach efforts that we started showed us firsthand, we seen it firsthand. When outreach started in this particular neighborhood, I didn't really have any staff. I had a team of volunteers who went on street outreach in the middle of the night. We would go out maybe a Friday night, or sometimes we went out at various times. It could be, middle of the night, early evening, but we seen the most activity the later it was in the middle of the night or very early morning hours. So that experience in starting outreach gave us enough data to know who we were seeing and what type of people were we seeing in this neighborhood. What were their age ranges? And did they look like people that lived in that community? And we learned a lot from this particular location about outreach. What we learned is there were people that were in that neighborhood being sold, and some of them were from very prestigious suburban areas in Cleveland, outside of Cleveland suburbs, where people have money and live good lives. And the reason why they were there was a lot of times because we talk about the trafficker honing in on someone's vulnerability. Drug addiction is a vulnerability. And so what they would do is connect with someone just to get those drugs and end up becoming a trafficking victim and really just getting enough drugs, like Detective Morgan shared on Monday, to just so they won't get dope sick. Because if you've ever experienced someone who is sick from dope sick, it's a horrible thing to experience. It is a horrible thing for someone to go through. And so they will do whatever is asked of them to get that drug. So we learned this location was a great learning experience about what we're going to see on the street. Who are the people that we're seeing? We seen young children, we seen teenagers, we seen older adults, we seen refugees that were here and living in those particular communities. And so it was quite a learning experience for us to build a team to do outreach, because we seen a lot of scary things and we seen a lot of abuse. And one thing that we did learn is we met people that couldn't speak English, who were on the street. And sometimes, most of the times, we could not communicate with them. We may not have known where they were from, but the language of love is very universal. And with the bags that we prepare when we go to outreach, we're taking care of their very basic needs. So we're going to give you something to eat, and we're going to give you something to take care of your personal care, your body, which might include toothpaste, soap, a washcloth, first aid kit, little things like that that helps a person be able to take care of themselves personally, because that makes them feel good and they don't have anything. And so making sure they have something to eat, making sure that they have those things to care for their bodies is an opening for us to connect. So even the people that in the early years, I came across a lot of people that spoke different languages. I couldn't speak those languages, but it was also a learning experience. When you're doing street outreach, this is the one way that you can teach people about human trafficking awareness, no matter what resources you have to give, but you have to take care of people's immediate need. If they're hungry, they don't want to hear anything you have to say if you don't have anything to give them to eat. So it's very important. So this location is how it all started on a street called Lorraine Avenue. And as you can see in this picture, there's all types of people that come. There's children, there's adults, there's, older people, there's younger people. And as we evolved with our outreach efforts, we began to recruit volunteers to help, but we had to learn there as well that everyone cannot do a particular volunteer task. You have to really screen people that are helping you, because you want people that are compassionate, that have a heart to help people, and that have a great attitude, and that they are warm and compassionate. And that's what I look for. I don't want help of people just to get help. I want people who really care about people, because what leaves the heart reaches the heart. So when you're going on the street encountering someone that has suffered a lot of pain, or who is currently homeless, suffering, being sold, trafficked, they need to come in contact with someone that is warm and inviting. And then you begin to win them over. So each of these neighborhoods that I'm going to show you, we go to each of these neighborhoods once a month and on a regular basis from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. So that means that you go in Cleveland, we have, several seasons. We have summer, winter, and fall. And so it can get pretty cold and it can get pretty hot. It gets rainy. We have all types of weather. But unless it's something that is really horrible, we're out there. We stand in the rain, we go in the snow, and we dress appropriately. And that alone has been very impactful, because we are showing the people that we have given them our word that we will be there at that particular date and time, and they know it. And we give them the information so that they know when we're coming back. And you begin to build a rapport with the people in the community. This can be done anywhere. You can do something on a small scale, whatever you have, and you begin to build community. And that is an opportunity to share about human trafficking awareness, but also provide them with something that you can. If it's a sandwich, if it's a snack, whatever it is, it's a powerful tool. And consistency is definitely the key. So this is a location, this is where it all started, on Lorraine Avenue. And then our next location is here in front of our center. This is outreach right in front of the building where we're located in. So we have street outreach right in front of our own building. The area that we live in has, that the center is, not that we live in, but the center is located in, we're in an area where there's a lot of drug addiction, a lot of transient people that are homeless, a lot of poverty, a lot of different situations, a lot of drug addiction. So we're in the right space to serve the people that are in need. And so this is why we want to make sure that you can see. I'll make sure somebody is not muted. We want to make sure that you can see the different locations. So this is in front of our building, the street outreach. Sorry. So when we're in front of our building, you met Jaleesa, who is our nurse. So the added bonus that we have is we're able to, if you see here at the bottom, here where I'm pointing, we're using medical students. We didn't always have a nurse. We work with medical students. So these are students. This is opportunity to get colleges involved and interns involved because they get a good experience by working at these events and volunteering. So here you'll see students here with the white coats on, their lab coats on, and they're basically just checking blood pressures of the residents or people who are coming to outreach. And this is another location that we attend as well. And this one is in a church parking lot. And this is how you can, the church parking lot is just an example of how you can partner with people in your community, whatever is in your community. If it's a faith-based organization, you can partner with them to do, it's when we do things on a little scale and it builds. So this is a church and they have a big, and it's a small church in a community that has a great need. The one thing that they had that was amazing is they have a huge parking lot, a big open space. And so the same can happen if you just have a big open space. And what we do is, you see here, there are tables. So we have tables set up, and most of these locations, we have partners like the Salvation Army. You'll see theirs in the next one. We partner with different people to provide different services. So the church provides the lot that we're in. It's great for the church because the church is visible in making sure that people are getting help that they need. So they advertise that we are coming to their parking lot to provide this service. It gives the church members a chance to get human trafficking awareness information, as well as the people in the community. And at the same time, they're doing their work as well. They actually have a table there. And if people want prayer, they offer prayer to them. It's everybody's choice. So you get an array of services, but this is an example of how you make partnerships with people in the community. And that's a partnership that we have with this church. And this same church, we prepare, we have an annual fair. Their lot is one of their greatest things. They're small, they don't have a lot of money or to offer things like that. But what they have is this big space. So every year we have a fair there. It's called a Resource and Empowerment Fair. Now, we've already built the relationships with the people coming to outreach. So this fair is an opportunity for over 20 plus organizations to come into this parking lot and provide information to the community. And this is how you build, this is how you become effective when you work as a team. Whatever services you're providing, you connect together, and then you come together, and then you can be more impactful. Just as you have been in this training, these are all people that we are working with. They're all partners that we're able to bring in and share with you. So partnership, building relationships is key to being effective with human trafficking awareness, making sure that you are working with everyone that is available and providing any type of service or education. You join together and you're more powerful the more you join together versus trying to do it on your own. So this location is an example of how you can build a relationship. There's no money, they don't really have any money. They can't contribute to the things that, but what they do have is the lot. They have the location, and we just come to their location and perform the outreach. So that is our Collinwood location. The next location is one that I feel is a really good example. This is what we call, what Beau was telling you about, this spoke from the shelter. When people are in the shelters and they don't, they're there a while and they help them to try to get housing, because sometimes they have no income or their income is so low, it's not enough to pay rent. So they go in something called subsidized housing, where their rent that they pay to have housing is based on how much money they receive. So, they may not, if they don't receive anything, they may live there at no cost. If they receive a little bit of income, they have a very reduced rent. What that does is great to provide housing, but on the other end, it brings a lot of people with a lot of different issues together. So in this particular housing development, they have thousands of people. I was just there the other day and figured out that they have 3 They're really tall buildings. We call them high rises here. And they're just rooms, floors and floors of people living in these tall buildings. So each of those buildings has about 1,000 people in each of those. And then they have a little section where it's really just for families, single mothers that have children, people, grandparents who are taking care of their grandchildren for whatever reason, or children who are homeless. They're adult age. Here at 18, you're an adult. So they don't have any money, they don't have housing. So all of these people live inside this property. So what we do there, the outreach is specifically for the people that live there, because it's our opportunity to give them human trafficking awareness. But at the same time, they're getting things. We provide basic care. We have a group of volunteers. As you can see down at this lower picture here, every time we go, there's a meal because you have to provide something for the people, their basic needs. And they're in there, food is, it's a lot. So these volunteers, they purchase the food, they prepare the food, and they come and serve the food. And what is so amazing about that is this group of volunteers, they work with 3 of our locations. And that's a lot of money. They get together, they get their friends together, and this is how you have to do some things. You have to get people that have resources and get it together. And it doesn't really take a lot. It could be a small item that you're given, but this is how you build community. This is how you build trust. This is how you educate the community. Every time we do this, we have an opportunity to educate and make people aware. The other unique thing about this particular outreach is we don't have a picture of them here, but we have a group of residents who live in this subsidized housing. We've been here for 4 years, and this is outside of our area. This is not in Cleveland where we're located. It's in a city called Akron, Ohio. And so it takes us about 30, 40 minutes to drive there and meet, but we have groups there as well. And we go there and provide this monthly outreach. So the residents that are there, we provide them with leadership training. And it was a process because we've been there for 4 years. They have lived in such dysfunction for so long. It was a long process, but now we have a core of individuals who live there, who are advocates. They get the word out. They wear our shirts about Know Human Trafficking. The people look to them in the building and they respect them because they know that they're involved with the outreach that we prepare for them. And they know it's a good thing that's offered to the community. So this is how you build community in different ways. And you can see each of these scenarios that we have are totally different. I'm missing school.
You did East Cleveland first.
Oh, okay. I didn't focus on this. East Cleveland is the one where, and you can barely see it, but up here where I'm pointing this arrow is the Salvation Army's canteen that Beau just talked about. This area is one of the poorest cities in Cleveland, and it's East Cleveland. And it used to be a very beautiful, gorgeous suburb where they have beautiful homes, but over the years, the entire city just went down. Most of their buildings are empty, they're abandoned. They have a lot of homeless people, they have a lot of drug addiction, and they have a lot of extreme poverty in this particular area. So what Beau does is provide us the canteen that you see here. And it's a truck, it's like a van. And they have one person in there. They prepare meals for about 50 people, because usually it could be up to 50 people that will come through for food. And they prepare those meals so the people They go through the line. We have students doing assessments, and these are medical students. And then we have other organizations that are providing different services. For example, we have an organization that deals with runaway youth. Someone asked a question about the shelters for youth. Here, if you're under 18, you go to a shelter that's called a residential shelter. And that is like under security and, you know, everything there is like a lockdown facility. They're not able to go freely come and go. So that's what happens. So we have someone there from that organization that can provide any youth that might be on the street, that might be homeless, that might be hungry, with resources to know what is available. So all the other tables you see are other organizations who are joining us and sharing whatever resources that they provide for the community. And then the last one is what we call a pop-up. Because we're in 5 locations and we're somewhere every week doing this, we have a lot of requests because there's a lot of areas that have need. However, we're not able to do those, but what we try to do occasionally is what we call a pop-up outreach. Go to a high-risk area, go to a high trafficking area, and just show up and provide services. And this is an example of another really subsidized housing where there's lots of different people living, and we provide those pop-up outreach services. So that is a little bit about our outreach. I don't know if we have any questions.
Did you do the heart?
Oh, yes.
And we have 2 questions.
Okay, and so I want to show you something that, Jaleesa, can you sit in this chair and hold the heart? I want you to see something that is so simple that we use. And it's the heart. This heart is a simple thing that we give out at outreach, at every outreach. And what it says, you are loved. And that heart is the most popular thing that people love. And that doesn't take a lot of money. We got packs of them. A heart can be made out of paper. It can be made out of sticks. It can even be made with your hands. The shape of a heart. The symbol of love is very powerful, and that's what we use. So I wanted to show you, thank you, Jaleesa. I wanted to show you that it's not something for $1 million. It's a simple red heart, and people adore it. You can see here, the lady received, everywhere we are, they get the hearts. So we wanted to share that with you as to show you that, what we're doing is very limited resources. There's no funding for outreach. The way that we're able to do it is by getting organizations involved. Maybe it's a group, maybe it's a church group that will provide any kind of donation. Maybe it's some soap or some toothpaste or whatever, or some snack that we can give out. This is what you do. You reach out into your business community, your community that has some resources, because it's not that you have to ask for something really big. What we're doing, we're able to do is because we have people that we partner with, people that see the work that's being done. We post all this stuff on social media. Every time we're in different neighborhoods, we say, we're here. We'll be back on this day. We show pictures. So groups that have donated, you'll see these things that we're giving out. They can see themselves. They'll see their bags on the table. This church group gave these bags. They actually see the work because people want to know that you are being a wise steward of what they are providing you. And then it just grows where people they see the results of your work and they want to help. Okay, so we have a couple questions.
The first one, what are some of the challenges faced when doing that street outreach?
You know what, we really haven't had that many. Every now and then, you may get someone that will be, they're not used to seeing so much access, and they will want to take more than what they're supposed to get. But the way that we do that is we've learned through this process to have everything organized and to have a person or a volunteer at every station. So when they're giving out food, there's a list of, of volunteers. Each one of them have something that they're doing. When we're handing out personal care items, we have volunteers that might hand out bags for women. We have a section for children, or we have somebody doing something for men. And we find that that eliminates the problem. So really, it's really amazing because all of these locations are really hard neighborhoods, but the people are so grateful that we don't really have any huge problems. They're so grateful and appreciative. And the way that occurred, it occurred over the time frame that we didn't just show up for a holiday, that we are consistent. Consistency is the key. They get noticed. They know when we're starting. Some neighborhoods, they're there before we get there, and they're ready and they wait in line. They're patient. So that's how that works.
Are you linked with any drug screening organizations?
Yes. So at Outreach, we try to provide as many organizations that will join us in each of these locations. So you heard Beau talk about Narcan, and Narcan is something that they give out freely here for people that are on drugs, so that if they happen to overdose, anybody can learn how to give it to them and be able to save their lives. So we have organizations like that provide things for people that are on drugs right on the street. We have people that provide other services about drug treatment and how to get help. We've even had a team that if someone wants it right then and there, they could go. So every time we get this, again, is building relationships. When we can build a relationship with an organization that provides a service, we invite them to join us. And then when we're posting it, we always thank everyone that is partnering with us because they are part of our success. We can't do it without them. The more people you have to join you, the more powerful and effective the work is.
This is when it comes to team self-care to avoid issues related to second trauma, how do you support each other?
So that's a very good question. We have to make sure that we are taking care of ourselves with self-care. So we try to make sure that even though we're a small team here, it looks big from the outside, but really we're small, but we do a lot of stuff. So it can get overwhelming, but we try to make sure that we take time to take care of ourselves. When we're closed, because you will always get people that will be coming and needing things, but we stick to our schedule so that we make sure that we get rest and we make sure that we get the self-care that we need. And we love retail therapy, and retail therapy for us is shopping.
Plants.
And plants. So we find the things that we like and we share it with each other and we laugh and we talk. And I'll tell you, the best part is that is why that anybody that is working in this field, this is not just work for anyone. This is work of the heart. Because if you have, no matter how exhausted I get, it's still, I love what I do. The people that work here love what they do. And then that makes an impact. But we know that we have to take care of ourselves. We have to spend time with our families. We have to spend time doing things that empower us as well. Is that it? Okay, so if you don't have any more questions, I'm going to, we're going to move on and tell you what is going to happen tomorrow at our last session.
Do you want to try the video?
So I don't think we got time for that.
It's only 10.
Okay, well, you know what, we're gonna try, we got a little more time, we're gonna try to show the video, then you can come and see if you can get it.
Okay, well, it's gonna be in that email.
So if you hang on, we're gonna try to show the video. That's fine.
There's another question if you want to do that.
Go ahead, where's the question?
Okay, this should work over Renee. video, there you go.
Yeah, this takes a long time. See,
Okay.
what's the other question while I'm waiting?
Subsidies are good, but sometimes they become unsustainable. So one, how do you ensure sustainability?
Well, remember, with us, we don't get any subsidies. The way that we do outreach is strictly through donations and support. So it's not funded through any particular subsidy. These are individuals or organizations that, or church groups that gather information for us, collect items for us to present at outreach. So it's not a subsidy at all. It's really just what we call in-kind donations. People that are donating items for us to give out. Okay, now where are we at? Okay, just hang on for a second. We're gonna try to see if we can get this video. Okay, Tracy, I need you.
Okay. So you'll probably need to stop share and then go back in. And then start share again, and it should just be there.
And then that's why I know it won't work.
Video, yeah. Now that it's opened. And then there's the play button right there. Now that it's opened, it should show up on your show screen.
Okay, let's try.
Yeah, let's try that.
Is that it?
Yep, that's it. And then there's a play button on the bottom. Yep, it's working.
Okay, good. Okay, we're gonna try to show you the video. There you go.
That takes a minute. They got it. And then try press play again. There we go.
Okay.
It's on Facebook. It's on social media sites. He recruits and calls.
I met my human traffickers /pimp/ baby daddy the mall. For that.
Traffickers recruit anywhere and everywhere that they have an opportunity to reach victims. Traffickers target anybody who will respond to them.
In the beginning, when I was 16, I seen him in a car this morning. And I was like, hey, he pulled over and gave me his phone number and we started talking. He took me out on little dates. He played as my boyfriend. He played like he was an attorney. Now I'm 16 and I don't know no better. But on the west side of Akron, he took me to this big house and he said that all of this could be yours. He made it seem like it was a fairy tale to me.
He's going to continue to try to fill that void that that person is missing. And how he does that is by probing, asking questions, and this person is so seeking that attention. That's the person that he's going to exploit.
To you where you don't know that you're first at the time. You just think that somebody's trying to.
I would just say manipulation, pretending that he loves me, being that I wanted to be with him that bad, that I agreed to it.
My ex-boyfriend's sister, she was my trafficker.
she would always promise me, yeah, we're gonna go get our hair done and we're gonna get our nails done and you can stay here rent free, you don't have to worry about anything because I know you and your mom don't get along. I didn't know what was happening, but I thought she just probably had a lot of boyfriends. It was Marie so opening doors, talking to them occasionally, and then letting them out. I really wasn't paying too much attention to it because I was too busy watching her son. Then she put me on the chat line with her voluntarily.
He always said how pretty I was. I just liked attention. He zoned in on me. That was my reason.
Recruiting is one thing, but grooming is a completely different aspect of it. I mean, you've gone from stage one pretty much to stage two, because depending on what that void is that they're filling, the trafficker is going to determine how he's going to have to control this victim.
He turned me out to crack cocaine when he wanted to control me better.
I had already became addicted to drugs. You have dope dealers. I can get you a room. And what you think that they're doing something to help you, they're actually doing it for themselves. But at the time, it was, oh, somebody there. Oh, you're trying to get me out the cold or out the street? You're trying to get me out the street.
I was not forced to use drug or alcohol because he didn't even want his women to smoke cigarettes or do drugs because he wanted them to.
You have several different types of traffickers. One who we like to classify as a finesse trafficker, finesse pimp, versus what they call a guerrilla pimp, one that likes to beat. And it's strictly violence for the guerrilla pimp. But there's always some type of violence around, whether he's a finesse or he's a guerrilla. Finesse just may not particularly beat the girls, he may beat one of the girls, usually his second, the most trusted one. And when all the other victims see her getting beat, they realize psychologically that this could happen to them. So that's another form of control, where on the other hand, the guerrilla, that trafficker, he uses violence on every one of the victims. So there's various different scenarios and it changes and it's very fluid depending on the girl and depending on how the trafficker recognizes what he needs to do to break the victim's will.
It was the female and then I ended up meeting the older gentleman. And he let me stay at his house to watch his dog. And then it got violent. We'll get into arguments because I wasn't doing what he wanted me to do.
It could be something as simple as, you know, you want a new life, you want to make it big and film, get you modeling. But first we have to do this, we have to do that. And they start having sex with them. And then they start having sex with their friends. And all of a sudden, you know, if someone wants to leave, victim is tired of it. And that's when the physical abuse starts. Physical abuse is always there, it's always present. It's always lingering somewhere close. The victim doesn't want to do with the trauma. Some people are willing to go out and go with this guy and have sex. But at some point they will stop. And that's when he takes control and says, hold on. In his mind, you're my money maker. To them, it's all about money.
And in reality, it is called, I need my money, I need it now. Let's say, but never let you stop.
She threatened to kill me. So I would just submit to it. I was beaten hard on my parents several times. At probably the worst time, I remember him saying, well, let's go take the kids to the park. And when we did go to the park, I had sat down to watch the kids play and he was playing basketball. And a gentleman sat next to me. And to him, I was supposed to get up as soon as that man sat down. But the man started talking to me and out of the blue, he came around and he popped my mouth at the park in front of me. He told me, it's like, when I get home, I'm gonna beat your ass. When we did get home, he had came out, ran in front of me, punched me to where I fell and just kept hitting me, choking and hitting me, and then took me in the basement and tied me up. I can't remember the words he was saying. All I was doing was praying. I remember him having a shovel and he told me to put my head on the ground. And I wouldn't. I said, if he's gonna kill me, he's just gonna have to kill me like this, looking at me. But he didn't end up doing anything else. He kept me down there for about an hour. He took my keys, he took my computer, my phone. And then for like, just had me in the house for like 3 days. And then afterwards, he was like, kind of get sued. I've met a lot of women who are victims of human trafficking, and each story has been.
It's a lot larger. It's much bigger. So, some of the scenarios that we've encountered, in the many years that I've been doing this, we've recovered children as young as 12 and women as old as 66 involved in human trafficking. They are in every community in Ohio, not just in the poor communities. We're talking about rural communities, we're talking about urban settings, as well as affluent communities.
The very first time he took me out was in Cleveland in a trick bar. Then he took me to a truck stop off the Nile exit. And that's where he hid me away. But he did traffic me like around, I worked in Cleveland, in Canton.
I think what some people seem to miss is that they think that it doesn't happen in their city, and they drive down the street with blinders on. They don't see.
While I was being trafficked, I lived, sometimes I was living right at home with my parents. And they didn't even know.
We've even recovered somewhere they tell their parents they're going out for the evening, they walk to the street corner, they get picked up by the trafficker. They go out, they turn tricks for the trafficker. They drop them back off at their street corner, and they walk back home, and no one would ever know. The victims that we find aren't always the victims you'll see on some of these TV shows. It's not always like that.
She'll talk to people on the chat line, we'll describe ourselves. So you'll dial the number, they'll tell you not to give us none of your personal information, like your phone number, your real name. So we'll use fake names like down your press it. And if we like somebody, you'll press a certain number and you'll be connected with the company. Yeah. You should your number. You should your number, and y'all will possibly meet up and hang out, chill, smoke, have sex. Most of my ads will be online. We would go to Hawaii, DC, Florida, California, Chicago. Going to different cities was like, he knew that if you went to a different city, you're like, you there. That first week, you're gonna get a lot of money because the people who do call the girls, they're probably tired of the ones that they've been seeing. There was probably 1 or 2 times that he took me to what you would call the Blade, which is where you walk the street in San Francisco, and I think one time in LA. Sometimes it'll be in houses, but other times it'll be in different neighborhoods, in a car. I started over there by Collinwood, and then I went all the way to Euclid, Ohio. I had people coming to me asking me, do I want to go to Haynesville or Youngstown, and I would say no. I prefer to go out and get that to central place. I spent a lot of time in hotels and motels.
We lived in a hotel in Jersey. And this is where all the pimps and hoes lived at.
Now, it does occur a lot in hotels. And anywhere you find a cluster of hotels in a certain amount of city, I'm guaranteeing you that there are victims of human trafficking being exploited in those hotels.
I didn't realize that this room was where drug dealers, that they were the ones that a lot of times they had customers who say, "Give me a woman," and since they say they got the room, this is who I was gonna be with. A lot of times they didn't want nothing for you but you, your company. But you had to be with them because you had the room, and that's what the dealer said. You gonna be with them, and that's when it got out of control. When I knew that I couldn't actually go out to do what I wanted to do, I had to stay in a room and make sure that I got all their money.
The price ranges were $50 for certain packs, $60 for certain packs, $80 for certain.
I would do anything to get his money. I was forced to make a certain amount, 700 to 800 on the weekday and 1,000 on the weekend.
The typical work schedule is 20%. Anytime the opportunity came, my phone rang, answered, it would just never stop because he would always blow the money, you know. I remember one time, I had worked on I had probably like $2,000 and I fell asleep in the car and he woke me up and he was like, the phone's ringing. And I was upset, you know, because I'm tired, I was long tired. And he's like,
My pimp used to beat me really bad though.
yes, I would be the harm. It was terrifying. I just didn't want to go through it anymore. It was a low point. I just looked at him and go for kidding.
The first one was going into a hotel room with one. We met, we go get the drugs and they flip out on drugs. They flip out and we forced to do the things that they want you to do because you put yourself in bad environments. And nobody would help you.
There was times where I had regular and I was thankful for those regular. Some of them didn't want sex from me. It was just my company. And that's why I think it was easier to deal with them.
I was arrested multiple times.
I got arrested, went right back. I love to get arrested because then I had a safe place. I had time to rest up. When we come out, we fresh. So arresting us, I love it to get arrested. Then I didn't have to worry about going over nobody else. I was at court and Sister Cecilia was there and Sister Cecilia gave this young lady a t-shirt. And I wanted I wanted a t-shirt. Somebody that was giving me something for nothing. Nothing.
There was one time where I got beat for 10 blocks in New York from my pimp. And then I had to turn around and go to work. I mean, mind you, everybody on New York was looking, getting beat, nobody helped me.
Who cared? Who cared? After being out there so long and getting arrested and all everybody ever said to me was, I'm a drug addict. I didn't realize that I was a trafficker until I came to Renee Jones.
The goal of the Attorney General's Human Trafficking Task Force is to recover victims identified in human trafficking, whether it's children and or adults, and to make sure through a victim-centered approach that they are taken care of first. Because without the victims, we do not have a case. We are concerned about the victims first, the prosecution second. The red flags that for parents that I would look for, and some of them cross over from parents to teachers or to counselors or to whomever, would be a complete change in a child's personality or an adult's personality. For someone who would go to school, you know, they wake up in the morning, their hair's not done, they're just going in sweatpants to, you know, now she's got a whole new wardrobe. She's never ever cared about doing her nails, now her nails are done. Her hair's done, she's got jewelry, she's got other things, cellular telephones that appear out of nowhere that they will not allow you to charge or look into. Some of those cellular devices are provided by the family, and some as punishment will say, I'm going to take away your minutes or I'm going to cut you off so your phone doesn't work. However, they don't realize that you can still access chat rooms through certain social media sites just on Wi-Fi. So the trafficker can still talk to your son or daughter without even having access to minutes. Along with their physical changes, you're going to see some mental changes as well. And they're going to start talking about older friends that they've met or places that they want to go or things that they want to see where they've never talked about that before. And these are all things that the trafficker's putting in their head, because what he's trying to do is say that, you know what, I can give you all these things where they aren't. And that is appealing to young children and some adults. One victim told us that she'd never been to Red Lodge before. And then he took me to Red Lodge. I mean, something just as small as that.
I didn't love myself and I didn't know my worth. And I also believe it was because I was sexually abused and that it opened up another addiction.
I was sexually abused. I was molested when I was 12 years old by a guy that owned a candy store down the street.
We have recovered victims in various neighborhoods in the greater Cleveland area. For example, our youngest victim, 12 years old, that we recovered, was recovered in North Olmsted, Ohio. Just a little hair stood up on the clerk's back, and clerks thought something was wrong at this hotel, and they called the police. We have recovered victims in Rocky River, Ohio, in Westlake, Seven Hills, Cleveland, Willoughby, from Euclid, and as far out as Litchfield, Lodi to Middlefield.
Detective John Morgan was the detective who arrested me, and he let me know about the Renee Jones Center, and I reached out to her.
After I went to Renee Jones, they asked me about me. They didn't ask me about the drugs. They had words of encouragement. They brought out something in me that I forgot about. I forgot about me.
They weren't asking us if we had a pimp. I think I got arrested in Independence. And that's probably the only time that an officer asked me if I had a pimp. Out of probably 10 times that I've been arrested. And I decided to go ahead and speak up and tell them the truth about everything.
The reason why it's now starting to come to light is because we have more non-government organizations and law enforcement working to combat this violation, this crime.
He threatened to kill my parents if I ever came back to him. But no matter how many times I would go back to my mom and dad and leave, they always kept the door open to me.
The best advice I can give to any household is it all starts at home. It all starts with discipline at home. It all starts with talking at home. It all starts with the dinner table sometimes. I mean, we've gotten away as a society of eating dinner together. Leave cell phones and social media and everybody sit down for an hour and have a meal.
I was looking for a big sister, and that would maybe run to my female trafficker. My male trafficker is because I didn't bother me.
And for people in school, counselors, teachers, along with those same physical things that I talked about, when you hear kids start talking about the older people that they're hanging out with, or tattoos start popping up over them that they never had before, these are all signs. Now, are they always signs that somebody's being trafficked? No, but don't ignore the signs. I always tell people that if there's a little twinkle in your stomach and you feel like there's something wrong, there's something wrong. And law enforcement, if you call us, we're gonna come out and we're not gonna be upset if it's not there. We're just happy that you call us.
I got to Renee Jones and I was already working on my addiction. And working on my addiction, I would wonder why a man would come up to me and I ended up back in the cycle. But it was something missing. I needed to work on why am I keep going out there. They empower me. And today I am drug-free. I still go to meetings. I go to my job. I love my life today.
Okay. Okay, good. I'm glad we won't make you listen to the whole song, but I'm glad that you got a chance to see the training tool that we use, the film that was made, that we made again. We didn't have any, all of the people you see in the film were people that work here or are connected as a volunteer, as actors and actresses. But it's a powerful tool that we still use to this day. When we go out, we show the film, it gives people a chance to see how trafficking happens here. And then we start the dialogue of being able to answer questions. So I don't know, is there any questions? Okay, so if you don't have any questions about it, we'll go on to what our last topic is going to be for tomorrow. Tomorrow, we are going to be having our last session, and it is on building an information and referral network. And we have one speaker, Carolyn Kinkoff, and she is the co-founder of the Alliance Against Human Trafficking. And this will be a very powerful session where you will learn how she single-handedly is building a coalition and her story. And so we look forward to seeing everyone tomorrow. Thank you for joining us today and have a lovely evening.